Jai Baba, and welcome everyone. We're so thrilled to have all of you here again today. Some of you were here Friday. Some of you, this is your first time with us. We managed to get through a minor miracle, which is we got through the introduction and the preface and the history last time on Friday. That's on the recording if you want to catch up with that. And it's very exciting that we're actually going to delve into the actual talks given to the boys, the 34 talks. So we're going to do things a little bit differently today. I just want to remind you there are a couple of constraints. One is we really need to focus on the book only. You know, anything else we don't have time to discuss. The second thing is, this is all new material from Baba, and it's kind of surprising for a lot of us who've seen some previews, but it may be a little difficult, therefore. So we're going to open it up to questions as we have the chance, but please don't unmute yourselves. What I'm going to ask is, while we're reading, if you have a question about the details of what's being read, something you don't understand, if you can put it in the chat window, that way we won't have a lot of confusion going on. Much appreciated in that respect. And the third thing is, we just can't get into a whole lot of depth right now. This is not the only time you'll have a chance to study this with Ward, I promise you. So with that said, everyone please mute who is not muted except for Ward.
You were saying something else, Cassandra, which is worth mentioning, that we're thinking with this first session to read through the first lecture and then have questions and interaction then, rather than doing it on basis of it being 1 hour, because that would be a more natural point from which to do that, right?
Yeah, very good. Thank you for reminding me. We've had a lot of discussions about how to do this. It's going to evolve over time. There's no question about it. Another thing I wanted to mention is, if your question doesn't get answered, you can send an email and we'll see if we can work it in somehow. If you send it to the CANDIC info@gmail.com. Are we ready? Are you ready, Ward? Go ahead and share.
I'm ready. Okay. Let's see. Which one? Okay, are you seeing it?
Good job.
All right.
Actually,
I'll go back to the previous page. This is the first page of this section, Creation and Its Causes, Lectures to the Prem Ashram Boys. And this is Baba talking out the window of the crypt room. So Baba was from December 20th. These lectures start on the 2nd, but from the 20th, he began to seclude himself within the crypt room, which is now his samadhi. So this is one of the windows of his tomb shrine right now. And this photo was taken in January, which is right when these talks. Anybody else here, or have we lost? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so you can see here on this one, like 2nd December. I'll read this one just because this is the one we're on, and it's interesting. At 9 a.m., the 5 Bhavaks, these are 5 men who Baba had seclude themselves in these tiny cabins right next to the crypt cabin. And over the next 2 months, they had very high order spiritual experiences also. So this entry tells you this. At 9 a.m., the 5 Bhavaks, Gopal Swami, Shankarnath, Shariyar, Marabanpur, Manakar, and Gulab Shah. I have to expand this, don't I? Or you can't see it. Yeah. Okay. Began to occupy their respective rooms in the Sadhak ashram under instructions never to step out of their cells and to take milk as their only food. 3 of them were still there when Baba dissolved the Sadhak ashram 2.5 months later on 26 February. That'd be 1928. That night at 8 p.m. in the West Tank Room, Baba's series of talks, compiled as Creation and Its Causes, opened with what the diary calls a very nice lecture on the universe. So later on, when you get the book, if you want to know what was going on, leaf back to this earlier section, which will tell you all of that, because it's actually very interesting and most relevant. But I thought it better not to include it within the lecture series itself, because the lecture series is very coherent and carefully structured by Baba. And okay, I want also draw your attention to this section of the book later on. I'm not going to be bringing this up every time hereafter, but sorry, it's taking me a little bit of leafing through to get there. Okay, there's this section called Notes on the Figures, and there's a lot of detailed information on the sources and figures and other things like that. And I hope soon all of those sources will be up there on the Trust website. So for people interested in that, all this information is there and available. Okay, so then going back to the start of our series here, this is, I'll just show you what we're going to be doing tonight, and then the reading can start. This is the first of the lectures. You can see it's about that long. And one thing that our reading will entail will be unpacking the figures. And what I would suggest is I'll sort of interrupt when is the best time to look at the figure. This first figure, for example, is actually a little better to look at after a paragraph or two. And we actually do need to read the key to the figure and spend a little bit of time unpacking it. Also, when we get to notes, like at the bottom of a page, here, I'll show you one. It's like those notes down there. I would suggest in general for the readers to read them. If they get too technical, like for further details, see pages, and then there's 2 or 3 or 4 lines of page numbers, just skip that. But anything substantive is, I think, useful to read as we proceed through the thing. Now, this talk and the next one, in a certain way, are introductory. And where Baba really launches into his main topic, I'll show you where that happens. Here's the second talk. I mean, these 2 talks are very interesting, but Baba is kind of preparing the ground. But it's really here in this third talk that Baba really starts. So we're going to have 2 lead-ins, you might say. Okay. Who's our first? Is it Melissa who's going to be the first reader?
Yes, I'll begin.
All right.
Kiamat, or Mahapralaya. How is the universe created? There are innumerable universes interwoven with each other, as indicated under item 2 in figure 1 above. So innumerable indeed are these universes that they cannot be counted even by realized beings like Shri, who, with Maharaj, once tried to do so. It is quite strange that though these chains of innumerable universes continually emanate, issue forth from a Sadguru who absorbs and eats them up, again, they cannot be counted.
Okay, let me just interrupt here, because this might be a good time to look at this figure. Here's the source figure that we had, and Nadia redrew it like this. So this is our source. We took this to be the eye of God, or the eye of the Sadguru, and we took Baba's eye, counting, and here 2 on the left are all these universes. So that's what this is showing. The eye of the Sadguru emanating all the universes and then trying to count them, which, as Baba proceeds to explain, cannot be done. Okay, so that's that figure. Okay, you want to go on?
This fact was proven.
Oh, by the way,
well-
those two footnotes might be worth reading here.
Is it possible for you to make them one step bigger, or is this what I get?
Unfortunately, I can't.
Okay, let me see what I can do with it. Kiamat is the Islamic term for Judgment Day or Doomsday, with much warned about in the Quran. You're going to have to read it, Ward, because
Okay,
I
I'll
can
read it.
barely read it.
Okay. Mahapralaya is the cosmic dissolution that comes to pass at the end of the cycles of the yugas, as this is explained in the Puranas and other Hindu literature. In this talk, Baba seems to assert an equivalence between these two religious eschatological ideas, right? Qiyamah is Islamic and Mahapralaya is Hindu. And of course, those two religious traditions would not recognize each other on matters like this. And the second one is about Shri. During the early Mehrabad period, the Mandali and other close followers often referred to Meher Baba as Shri, an honorific prefix attached to the names of great men or deities. Here, in the episode narrated below, Meher Baba is referring to an occasion in 1921 when Baba was secluded with Upasni Maharaj in Maharaj's Jopari hut in his ashram in Sakori. You know, there's a Jopari in Mehrabad, right? So it's just a word for hut. So Maharaj had a Jopari also. Okay.
This fact was proven one night at Sakori when Shri and Maharaj, sitting in Maharaj's Jopadi, were talking about this subject of calculating the number of universes. Both of them, each in turn, tried to carry out the experiment. The first to make the attempt was Maharaj. Now, to calculate and fix the exact number of universes.
Okay, 1 second.
Thank you.
Which
flow in a regular chain continually without a moment's intermission, one has actually to stop the flow in order to check and count up as many universes as possible. But this cannot be done, and there are reasons for it. For some slight trouble is caused by this attempt to stop the flow. The trouble arises due to the concentrating of one's mind and whole force on that one point alone. All thoughts center around this one issue, and the act of concentrating for the sake of stopping the flow of universes in order to count them causes and precipitates duality, plurality from unity. Unity being the state of the realized one. This causing and precipitating of duality may sometimes prove fatal to the physical gross body, which cannot stand the strain, and so the body may even have to be dropped for a tense moment. It was for this reason that Maharaj checked Sri Baba in his effort to stop the chain and count the universes, as this attempt would endanger the very life of the physical body of Sri, as explained above. Indeed, as Maharaj said, no one has ever succeeded, not even the perfect masters. And why not? For the reason explained above. The Sayambhadi, can you say that for me?
Swayambhu.
Swayambhu, I see it now, okay. The self-originating reality starts from the masters, and if it were stopped for the purpose of counting, this attempt would cause and proliferate dualism and so much trouble would ensue that the very life itself, physical existence, would fall into peril. As said, events actually did play out like this with Shri's own gross body once, when in a tense moment, in the course of trying to count the universes, his physical body came into danger, so that Maharaj had to step in once to halt the attempt and stop the process.
If I could just, if you guys don't object, I may just throw in comments sometimes, since I've studied this for so long, just noting some themes worth, heeding. One is that Baba is talking about innumerable universes. And back in those days, that was a view held by nobody within the scientific world. Whereas now it's quite commonplace. But Baba really did mean universes, and he reiterated that several, like in the East-West Gathering and so forth. He really did mean universes. And this is we're going to come back to this much later in the series in a very interesting thing. I actually am fascinated by this question and have a lot of speculations on it. The other thing, and I'm reluctant to even to try to run with this, because I don't know enough about the subject, and it's always dangerous to make speculations on this, but it's very hard not to notice a certain resemblance to this and what's called the Heisenberg principle in quantum theory, which was where you can't know both the location and the momentum of an object with precision at the very same time. It's not it's not the same thing Baba's talking about, but it certainly is reminiscent of that. And that was formulated at exactly the same time that Baba or within the same year as Baba was giving these talks. As a matter of fact, within the world of astrophysics, the view was that the prevailing view was that the universe was perpetual. There was no creation. It had been there forever. But it was this very year that the first formulation of what later became the Big Bang Theory got proposed by a French priest, as a matter of fact. So I'm just noting that these talks that Baba was giving do seem to coincide in time with a very great revolution within the world of astrophysics. I don't know enough about the subject, but I'll just point out that coincidence. Okay. I'm going to run for another one.
Sure. Were we right here at process?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, once the universes emanate from a Sadguru, once they come out from him, after many ages, they are taken in again. But though they really have gone in, been absorbed, disappeared from the standpoint of the outside, they really are there on the inside, though they have, though they have reverted to the state of the imagination. Kalpana, Blas, Blam.
Bas and Brahm. And
yeah, I have trouble when it's italics. My eyes won't do it.
No,
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to read those out.
I'll just stop for those.
These are
okay.
favorite words of Baba's, and the note translates them. Kalpana means an idea, an imagining, a whim. Bas, that BH is pronounced like buh, buh. You aspirate the B. We don't do that in English, but it's a basic consonant in the Indic languages, means illusion, and Brahm designates perplexity, confusion, delusion, wandering in the mind. All are Gujarati words. So he was saying it reverts the imagination, and then he gives those three Indic words.
And hence they have become useless, yet they are there. In the due course, from the inside, they emanate, They come out again until eventually they pass through their universal minds of Mahapralaya and get swallowed up once more, and so on and on and on. As a
Okay, should
parallel
we have
case,
maybe we should have another reader? Fareshte, do you have the list of readers that Cassandra had?
I'm sorry, Ward, I do not.
Ah,
Do you recall?
I'm happy to continue.
sure. Well, let's see. We have a bunch of other people. I'm just thinking maybe like 2
And-
pages or so. It's nice.
Can someone volunteer, a new person?
I believe Alan was on the list.
Jim Wilson is on the list.
Okay, Jim, do you want to jump in?
I can do that. I just got on. It took me forever to get on. As a parallel case, consider your own state in sound sleep when you are unconscious of your body, of your own existence, and even of the world and universe. We could call this a kind of pralaya, a being taken and turning and entering within. But when you awaken again, all that you had absorbed becomes conscious and emerges. This is the pralaya of the coming out again, and so on and so on. This pralaya of being taken and going within, and in due course coming out again, transpires on the individual level. But when it occurs for a realized one, we are dealing with the universal case. And when all the universes get absorbed within and projected out, we call this great event Mahapralaya. So, to review, pralaya happens every day. For the ordinary human being, when he reverts to sound sleep on an individual scale, and for the realized one, when that sleep occurs on the universal level. So it is said in the Quran that on the day of resurrection, Qiyamah, they will all rise up from their respective graves. And a footnote on that is this major Quranic theme is expressed in several places, including Quran 22, 6-7, which reads in English translation, "That is because God is the truth, and because he gives life to the dead, and because he is powerful over all things, and because the hour is coming in which there is no doubt, and because God will resurrect whoever is in the graves." This is the Study Quran, a new translation and commentary.
And do you want to read the preceding note about Mahapralaya?
Okay. In Hindu mythology and cosmology, Mahapralaya is the annihilation of the universe in the end of an age, or kalpa. Pralaya, as referred below, is a lesser form of annihilation, occurring more frequently and with less severity. In this talk, Meher Baba associates pralaya with the annihilation on an individual scale that occurs when a person goes to sleep.
So let me just mention that this use of pralaya to refer to what happens to individuals in our daily cycle is a connection Baba is making. In Hindu mythology, pralaya is used not in that way, but to refer to a less total universal annihilation. Mahapralaya is complete annihilation, and pralaya is a minor, more frequent, but lesser annihilation. But Baba is correlating that universal process with what happens on the individual cycle. That's the connection.
Also, Baba's language, involution and evolution is apparent here. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let me jump on to the next page. Okay, and we can we'll hold off on the figure until we've read a little bit.
Okay. 3 God states. Now, to come to the real point of explanation, mark the following 3 states of God as shown in figure 2. Take note of God in state B, where he becomes creator, preserver, and destroyer of the universe. Shristi.
Okay,
This
let's
God-
actually look at it. I think this would be good right now. We didn't have a source figure for this. There was just a blank. So we created this figure on basis of how Baba was explaining it. So A, God experiencing the I am God state. So this is God self-conscious, but not creation conscious. In the 10 states of God, this would be the second state of God. God in the beyond state. B here is right on the own point. God is the creator, preserver, and destroyer. In God speaks, this would be the third state of God. And the Ishwar in infinite intelligence is called Ishwar. And C, all these little small drops are God as the Jivatma or soul in bondage. So to, oops, sorry, I jumped the page here. Meaning to expand it. So you can see those are all depicted as bubbles. And here's the key, what the key says. In figure 2, state B, you see B here, that's the Ishwar point or own point, or creator, preserver, destroyer, finds its home on a single point that is the own point. In this state, which infinite intelligence calls Ishwar, and God speaks, the third state of God, God does not possess self-knowledge. Baba consistently said this. The creator, preserver, destroyer doesn't know himself as God. The Jivatmas in C, that's all these little bubbles there, are represented as bubbles with points at their centers representing the Atma or true self. You know the word Atma, right? It's soul or the real self. At the core of the ignorance enslaved drop soul individuality. While these two diagrammatic elements repeat in some of the figures that follow, figure 2, that's this one, represents A, the original God state, as God conscious, whereas in some of the later figures, God is primordially unconscious. This is just a warning when you get to later figures. Later figures start with the unconscious God, but this one, the A state, is conscious God. In the balloon, we haven't read it yet, but in the balloon analogy that immediately follows figure 2, the man blowing into the balloon corresponds to state B, since he does not know himself, and not to the God conscious state in A. So that's going to come right up here. Okay, do you want to read on?
Okay. This God in state B, poor fellow, though he knows to create, preserve, and destroy the universe, yet he knows this only and does not know himself. Here Sri evoked the simile of a balloon in which a man blows air through his mouth with his eyes always turned outward in an opposite direction, that is, away from himself and toward the balloon as it increases in size, and hence he never sees or knows himself. Sri continued.
Okay, let me just point out that when you see this kind of screened back bit of text, what that means is that this is not Baba's voice. This is the voice of the Mandali narrator. It was in our text. This would be someone like Chanji who put this in. Okay, that's what that means, that design convention.
Okay, in C, God is Jeev, bound in his bindings, bandham. In B, as we have seen, God is the creator, preserver, and destroyer of the universe, but he does not know self. In A, God has the experience of I am God, I am Anand, I am all bliss. Evidently, by state A, Baba does not intend to designate the beyond state of God, the first of the 10 states of God in God Speaks, since in that state God is unconscious, but rather phanafila, that part of the beyond state of God that God Speaks designates as to be. See Meher Baba, God Speaks, the theme of creation and its purpose, and so
You can
on.
just skip all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Chart 8, facing page 158, actually in 2b, God experiences God's trio nature of knowledge, power, and bliss, whereas in state A, God experiences only bliss, as that soul does not achieve mukti, as that soul who achieves mukti. The point is, God in state A remains unconscious of the universe and can provide no help to those jivatmas lost in it. It is perhaps for this reason that later in this talk, Baba includes A among those states that have no meaning or worth. Wow.
We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, you want to read one more paragraph and maybe we could
Okay.
shift readers in?
In all of these A, B, and C, God remains one and the same, but in C, poor fellow, God is caught in the binding of the jiv state, and in B, though he serves as the universe's creator, preserver, and destroyer, he enjoys not the knowledge of self. Only in state A does he experience the I am God state. In short, why do all these troubles afflict God in his various states?
Okay,
This
does anyone else would like to take over reading? Just trying to vary voices and give different people
Certainly.
interested.
Okay.
If we had Cassandra, she would know.
I'm up.
Who's this?
This is Alan.
Okay, great. Yeah, good. So this happens is where we are.
This happens because in the beginning, God does not know self. And to come to this knowledge, all these troubles follow. And it is necessary and essential that they should.
And let's see this footnote. Okay.
Here, Baba
Okay,
seems to refer to state A as described, and you jump the page, as described above, where God is self-conscious, but to the original beyond state where God is unconscious and out of which the original whim surged.
Okay, you want to keep going?
Yeah, and that note reference, this happens because in the beginning, God does not know self. And to come to this knowledge, all these troubles follow, and it is necessary and essential that they should. Let's take an example. Everything around you, you see with your eyes. Suppose, while looking at something in particular, while seeing that something, suddenly the idea comes to you, I must see the actual eyes that see all these things. Toward that end, you make efforts by reflecting on the problem, by reading and hearing what others say, and thus you come to know that you can see your own eyes if you look into a mirror. To fulfill your purpose, then, you need to procure a mirror, a looking glass. You proceed to pay a visit to a shopkeeper and ask him for a mirror. The shopkeeper has a mirror in stock, but he demands money in payment of its cost. You extend yourself to get the money from wherever you can, and when you manage to accomplish this, you render it to the shopkeeper, who gives you the mirror desired. then you can actually see your own eyes in the mirror. And when you have done so, your object having been accomplished and your purpose served, you throw the mirror away, or let us say, set it aside, since it has no further use. In this analogy, the shopkeeper may be compared to the Sadguru. The money may be compared to love for the Sadguru. And the mirror may be compared to the grace of the Master, Guru Krupa. So try, all of you, to earn money with which you may procure the mirror from the Sadguru. That is, create love for the Sadguru. And in return, he will give you the mirror, the power of sight, with which you can see your own eyes. That is to say, the soul or self. In short, these three states have no meaning or worth. There's a note.
Yeah.
State one has no meaning or worth, presumably since it remains aloof from creation and renders no assistance to bandhas, bound ones, such as Prem Ashram boys listening to this talk. For such spiritual help, they need to turn not to individualities in any of these three states, but to the Guru.
So let's just jump back to the diagram to see what he's talking about here. These A, B, and C, or A and B, he's saying these are worthless and they're of no use. And A is where God is in the I am God state. But presumably the problem is that he's in the I am God state, but isn't conscious of creation, has no duty to creation, and so doesn't have any usefulness. This is a theme Baba is going to hammer home at the end of his lectures, which is you need a master. He just keeps bringing that up at the end of talks. Okay. Sorry there. Yeah. Okay, do you want to keep going?
In short, these three states have no meaning or worth. Only three things are of real worth and worthy of consideration. One, God. Two, Sadguru. And three, love. And the fun of it is all three of these are one and the same. So once again, boys, try to create love within you, real and sincere love for God, that is, for the Guru, so that the Guru may show you Paramatma.
Okay.
Who is greater? Who is greater, Muhammad or Allah? Muhammad, of course. Who is greater, Krishna or Brahma? Again, the same answer, Krishna. Yes, this is a fact, yet do not speak about it to others in the world unless and until you see, know, and experience it for yourself. Otherwise, you will put yourself in a cauldron of troubles, all for nothing. Yet this remains a fact beyond doubt. God is one, while bandhas or slaves are innumerable. Bandha karoda che.
That's right. Which means bound ones are tens of millions.
Wow.
Karodo is the Gujarati plural of karod, which in the Indian numeric system means 10 million. The word we use is crore. It's standard word for crores of rupees, for example. 10 million.
When bandha becomes one, then he is kuda, and kuda is one. Kuda ek che, as Hafiz has said in one of his poems. And there's a note.
Yeah, these endnotes. Oh, yeah. The endnotes refer to the back of the book, and almost all of them are highly textual. So we can skip them. If people really want to delve into the manuscripts and how the editing was done, that's where that information would be. Okay. Do we want to have another reader just to take it to the end? Anybody else interested?
This is Marion. I could read.
Great. We don't have Cassandra back, do we?
No.
She just abandoned us. She set us up and then just left us on our own. Okay.
It begins,
Hmm.
therefore.
Therefore, yeah.
Therefore, until such time as you see God yourself, know that you are still Anda. And in that imperfect state, if you declare, I am God, you are a kafir, an infidel indeed.
Kafir in Islam is a very strong word. It's like you're heathen. You're out of the religion. It's one of the biggest insults you can give. And banda, you can see our word binding in it. It's cognate on that, a bound one.
As another analogy, Shri related the story of a mad beggar who always used to shout, I am the king. And when he did, all the bystanders used to laugh. But if King George were to proclaim this, no one would laugh, but to the contrary, all would believe him, for he is that, the king indeed.
And here the note, I'll just read quickly because I can see it. King George V, 1865 to 1936, monarch of England and nominal ruler of the British Empire from 1910 until his death. India, of course, was part of the British Raj at this time. So Bob is just referring to the monarch who is the titular head of India at this time.
Hi, Ward. What did I
Are you
miss?
back?
What did I miss?
Oh, Baba manifested and revealed all these secrets, but he told us not to tell anyone. Glad to have you back.
Thursday. Thank you, Thursday, for keeping it going. I appreciate it.
We're almost at the end of this first lecture. I'm glad you're back. Good. Want to keep going, Marian?
Okay. Or again, if the same madman were taken to the throne in the inner sanctum of the royal palace and seated there with a crown on his head, enthroned and crowned thus, he could truly declare, I am the king, but not until then. So suppose, Shri continued, in an intoxication, in a sort of madness, one believes oneself to be a king, well and good. But when he comes back to his senses, then he has to hear a great strain, Shri went on.
You get what Baba's...
I'm sorry, it's bear. I think he has to bear a great strain.
Yeah. Baba's talking about people who get deluded that they're God. That's his subject here. Yeah.
So try to see God. And when you have succeeded, boldly assert, I am God. In truth, you are so already. You are God, but you need to see it for yourself. How? By seeking out, placing yourself in front of, and listening to the one who has actually seen, experienced, and united with God, and by doing as he says. And what does Shri, like any realized being, ask and desire of you? Only Prem. Prem and more Prem.
Yeah, so Prem means love in the Indic languages. Over the next few months, as the Prem that Baba was calling for here had indeed awakened among the schoolboys, Baba established what he called the Prem Ashram. It didn't exist yet, but it came about because of what started happening right now, right at this time.
And a Sadguru is the very living personification of Prem. So keep on thinking, thinking, and thinking continually of your Guru. Go on creating Prem for him and desiring Prem in return. And you shall get it. Om.
And I don't know, this is the only time we get an Om at the end of the lecture. It was there in the manuscript. I don't know what on earth that means. Okay, that's the first lecture.
Thank you.
Anybody want to make any comments or questions or have any discussion at this point?
Yes, this is Christina. I do have a comment.
Yeah.
Hey, Ward.
Hey, Christina, nice to hear your voice.
Thank you. You too. At the very beginning of this lecture, one could imagine, because we're using our language and our understanding of it to imagine what's being written here, which is being written from a dictation, and we weren't there. So it's easy to imagine that what is coming forth is a thing. But my understanding is that all of this is a form of seeing and a false thinking of the imagination. And these universes that are innumerable are a form of thinking, and to stop that flow of thinking, or that thing that is thinking, to stop it causes duality. So it's thinking about thinking, which causes a risk to the thinker. And I'm so glad that was written here, because I haven't seen that explicitly anywhere else, and it confirms my thinking that all of it, all the universes, all the innumerable individualities, are all simply the thinking of realized God. And
yeah, here he uses the word Sadhguru. By the way, he hadn't really talked about avatar very much, although he does later on to the boys. So Sadhguru means 10th state of God, including the avatar.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
to my mind, it would be easy to read this and go like, really, there's millions of universes. Oh my gosh. It's all just thinking. It is all just the false thinking of the imagination. And it is literally the seeing of God. And then once it becomes
But at the same
reflected,
time, I think there really are innumerable numbers of universes. I think he actually does mean that. And we're going to,
it's totally possible, but it's still all a form of seeing, and none of it, that's why it's illusion.
here's the passage that we read. Why don't I read it again? Because it's where he talks about this. This is going to be so poured over and studied in the future.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When people refer to this moment in Baba's life, in Lord Meher and other places, this is actually the real source passage. 1921, Baba with Maharaj. For some slight trouble is caused by this attempt to stop the flow. Remember, to count the number of universes, the Sadhguru has to stop the continuous flow of universes, and that creates a problem. The trouble arises due to the concentrating of one's mind and whole force on that one point alone. All thoughts center around this one issue, and this act of concentrating for the sake of stopping the flow of universes in order to count them causes and precipitates duality, plurality. And that word Advaita, do you know Advaita Vedanta? That means non-dual. This means duality. From unity being the state of the realized one. Yeah.
Jim Wilson.
Reflexiveness.
Thank you, Christine. Jim Wilson, you have a question?
Obviously, this is deeply related to infinite intelligence and the work that Baba, the work that was done in bringing about the book Infinite Intelligence, probably relies to a certain degree on this. But he does explain quite clearly the difference between thinking as creating and thinking as realizing. That certainly a very central concept in infinite intelligence, and we can see very much the kind of the seed of all that in Baba's manifestation or darshan.
Oh, they are doing it.
Yeah, you know, when this gets assimilated and studied, this whole book, it will be really a project to be done to bring this into relation to infinite intelligence. He hadn't explained thinking and creating, you know, creating and realizing to these Mayor Ashram boys, but I agree it's very relevant to all of this. I don't know, some of you may have studied infinite intelligence, but it's of major importance.
And Lindsay O'Keefe. You can unmute yourself there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I did put my question in the chat as requested, but it's basically, there's something about duality that is expanded here that I don't understand, because concentrating on the universes apparently puts the master at risk of dropping his body. And yet the creation of universes creates duality. So is this discussed elsewhere, anywhere?
No, it isn't. We're going to see later on. Yeah, I know this. It's a very enigmatic passage. It's going to really take some puzzling out, and maybe we'll need the help of a perfect master to really understand this. He does later on. There's a what I regard, I could really talk a long time about this, but he says, now I'm going to tell you a secret. Every individual is his own universe. Anyway, that's a big topic there.
Yeah. So all I can, I'm just imagining that if the universe is already in a chain and it's being created and Baba concentrates in order to count, it's making a duality of a duality. It's kind of
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, here he says when the master stops the flow of universes out the own point to count them, this precipitates duality.
Yeah.
It's a bit paradoxical. But maybe it's like an explosion or something. I don't know.
Well, universes are duality, right?
Yeah. So when he stops the flow, that precipitates it. I don't know. Maybe it sort of bottles it up and creates I don't know. Are there any perfect masters here who can sort of do it for a minute and show us this process? No, it's fascinating though, isn't it? Apparently stopping the flow of universes, which, as you say, are duality, stopping their flow precipitates duality.
Maybe he means precipitates duality for the master.
Maybe so. It's all bottled up in him, and thus he comes in hazard of dropping his body. I would have to presume that when the master does this, he is functioning out of point B here. Now, this is Creator, Preserver, Destroyer, Ishwar, but the master can assume that function also. And I presume it's through that point that all these universes flow. Though Baba hasn't exactly said so right here.
Can you reread that passage, please, that we're discussing?
Yeah. In fact, I'll go back a little bit earlier. I know I don't know of any other passage quite like this in the Meher Baba literature anywhere. So look at this bunch of boys. Look at where he starts, for God's sakes. Holy smokes. Anyway, this fact was proven one night at Sakori when Shri and Maharaj, sitting in Maharaj's Jopari, were talking about the subject of calculating the number of universes. Both of them, each in turn, tried to carry out the experiment. The first to make the attempt was Maharaj. Now, to calculate and fix the exact number of universes which flow in a regular chain continually without a moment's intermission, one has actually to stop the flow in order to check and count up as many universes as possible. But this cannot be done, and there are reasons for it. For some slight trouble is caused by this attempt to stop the flow. The trouble arises due to the concentrating of one's mind and whole force on that one point alone. All thoughts center around this one issue, and this act of concentrating for the sake of stopping the flow of universes in order to count them causes and precipitates duality, plurality, dvaitya, from unity. It precipitates duality from unity, unity being the state of the realized one. This causing and precipitating of duality may sometimes prove fatal to the physical gross body, and I presume this means of the perfect master, because who else could be doing this, which cannot stand the strain, and so the body may even have to be dropped in a tense moment. That's why Maharaj stopped Baba from doing it.
So Ward, I just wanted to remind people we have a whole hour yet. So I ask you to please raise your hands if you have a question, rather than unmuting yourself. I'm trying to give everybody a chance. So Baba, yeah, John, you're up next, buddy. Oh, and by the way, Cheryl had asked in the chat if you, Ward, could explain what you mean by worlds and universes.
Okay, well, certainly is a difference. We're going to have
what Baba means, all the things
Yeah.
that Ward knows about what Baba says.
Yeah. I'm reluctant at this juncture to try to say what a universe is. I think we're going to get help on that, or another perspective on that later on, where Baba says each person is his own universe. But by world, Baba in this book does seem to mean like a planet, a world of life. And he's going to tell us a lot about that. So it's quite different than a universe. By universe, he really means something like the universe.
Okay, John.
Well, you caught me in the middle looking things up. You know, there's stuff in Lord Mayhair if you just search for creation of universes. And it seems that Bao had access to this material. It's so similar.
It's from here.
Like he had access to this. Yeah, it's from here.
You're right. He took it from here. Yeah.
No. One of the things it reminds me of, we're talking about this stopping. Having everything through the universal mind, if you will, or all of the beyond, concentrated on one point is an awful lot like how creation started to begin with, through the own point. So I think there's some reference there, or some analogy there, that you're stopping, but then you're doing the same thing that causes creation to occur. In a pause in creation, you're just creating a whole mess, like a creation within a creation. Yeah, that's just a thought.
Interesting, John. Thanks.
Yeah, that is interesting. You know, you can see it would create a mess to replicate the process within the process going on.
Yeah. Talk about infinite iterations. We're already in the infinite.
We'll have infinity biting its tail. Ellen Van Ellen, J. Baba.
Oh, I had actually another.
You have another one?
It's just one thing.
Sorry,
in infinite intelligence, Baba talks, especially in the Bhakti section on the 4 yogas, on how you can do worship or bhakti of Paramatma or Ishwar for that matter, and be handed over to the Sadguru. Now, he doesn't put that detail in here. He says it's useless to basically pray to either of those things. And I think that's just motivationally perfect. It's his theme. He doesn't want to have these details. You can go here or go there. You must come to me.
Right. That's an insistent theme of this entire series. He's saying, love the guru, love me, create Prem. He's steering them away from all other paths. Without a doubt, he's doing that. That pattern comes up in like most of the lectures. At the very end, he says, just forget about all of this and create love, which raises the question, well, why did he talk about it in the first place? I'm just being a little bit facetious here. Why did you talk about it, Baba, if you want him to forget about it and just create love? But clearly it did have that effect of creating love among them. Yeah, so the whole end part of this lecture is an extended discourse on why you have to pursue the master, you know, the shopkeeper who can sell you a mirror and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier in a prior Zoom lecture here of balancing the head and the heart, that theme. Yeah. And I'd like to add to that, it's also speaking to the mind, to what's beyond the mind, and what you beyond what you could find anywhere else, and even any other master. And so the mind comes to its end, a stopping point. He's stopping the mind. It's useless. Then which then opens the heart. That's another image I have.
Easy for you to say, John. Ellen, are you ready?
Yeah. Just further looking at the phrase precipitates there, I kept hearing that in the terms of chemistry. You have all this flow going on and all this solution and all this indivisible, relatively indivisible creation of universes. So precipitates means that things become discrete and more dual and drop out of the flow. So it's just a language. I think that really helps with the imagery and the visualization of what's being described.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with people?
Sounds like you were in a chemistry class at some stage.
At some stage, yes. one life or another.
I found it useful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheryl, do you have your hand up?
Ellen, repeat what you just said, and then I have a question. Ellen, could you just repeat that again, please?
I'm sorry.
All right.
In chemistry, if you have something in solution and it precipitates, it drops out of solution. So I'm seeing this as you have the flow of universes, and if you stop it, pieces fall out. It all stops being a seamless flow of creation. And it goes back to what John is saying. It all becomes a mess.
So then I have my comment, which if I don't know why I'm saying but if God is all knowing, if the Sadguru is all knowing, then wouldn't he know without having to stop anything exactly how many universes there are? Since nothing is beyond him, he is everything.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
I mean,
I hope we find out more about this.
A real polarity for me.
Yeah.
I guess it's indeterminable. It's indeterminable. There's no answer that can be arrived at. Yeah. So maybe Baba and Maharaj weren't really God realized. They were just kind of.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just wondering. I think there's this huge dichotomy.
It is. It's a real. Now these are questions that the people will puzzle over. No doubt about it. But
I mean,
he's
I'm not
clearly
saying-
saying that he, the avatar, and a perfect master were not able to do it. And Maharaj says no one has ever been able to do it. Maybe it has something to do with the infinity of the illusion, the infinity of the imagination. You can't draw any boundaries on it because it immediately exceeds those boundaries.
Thank you.
Elizabeth.
So I have a comment on that. One option that I happened to think of was maybe, the 10 states of God are the principal 10 states of God. And in some of those, God is unconscious. So perhaps one reason God in the form that they were in when they were counting is in a state that was not conscious or whatever. I don't know. I'm just speculating that perhaps God is in a different state, and at that state could not do it, but being all knowing would also know it. And these coexist at the same time. Anyway, that's my comment. But my
So if he was in
question-
the right state, he could have given us a number, huh?
I don't know, Ward. What do I know? Anyway, but I Joe Wilson's comment confused me, and thinking as creating versus thinking and realizing. So I know that refers to infinite intelligence, but how is it being related to, or where was that passage was related to this book in creation and its causes? And can you just make a small distinction without going into a lecture about the two, just because I can't let go of it? I'm sorry.
I think we better not attempt to do that here. It would be, if for people who haven't read Infinite Intelligence, it would just be too far removed, and it's a difficult job. Also, to relate it to here takes a lot of deep thinking. So maybe we better not try to do that right now.
And that's also
that.
that's also one of the more difficult aspects of infinite intelligence, is getting to that. So it is quite a bit.
Right. It really takes just about a good hour just to wrap your head around that idea, to tell the truth.
Maybe one of these days we'll do a workshop just for that.
That would be good. If there are any page numbers to reread in Infinite Intelligence on that anyone knows, Jim Wilson or somebody.
The whole book.
The whole book.
About the first 200 pages is the dominant theme.
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you. Thank you.
You'll have to pay a lot of money for the Cliff Notes to University.
That's right. You're going to write them.
Really pay money for the Cliff Notes.
I heard you were going to write them, Christina.
I'm halfway through.
That whole theme is extremely redundant from page 1 through page 200 or so. Yeah. Page 157 has a kind of interesting chart that and so on. But it, like Ward said, it's a complicated thing that takes a while to sink into your brain.
Thank you all for those comments. So Marianne from Mayor Runners here, you have your hand up, dear.
Yes. Ward, could you please talk about or show us in these pages what were the three things that Prem was to be cultured for? I think it was God, Sadhguru, and then the third one is that.
Yeah. Love. Let's see, where was that? Have I jumped right over it? Yeah, God, Sadhguru, and love. I'm not finding it right at this instant. Yeah, here we go. In short, these three states have no meaning or worth. So he's talking about like the original, no, he's talking about the God in his beyond state where he's having the I'm God experience. He's talking about God as creator, preserver, and destroyer of the universe. And he's talking about the Jivatma, that's like you and me. And these three states have no worth. And what he means, you see, again, this is like what, John was kind of saying too, is that Baba is focusing them on the path of love. And he's basically telling them, none of these things have any relevance to you. Like Allah is not relevant to you, Muhammad is. Brahma is not relevant to you, Krishna is. Why? Because Muhammad and Krishna make God manifest to the lover of God. And that's what you need to seek out. So he'll make these very strong, like he's dismissing God Almighty, for heaven's sakes. He says, God Almighty is of no worth.
Are you done, Marion?
So when he says the third one is love,
Yeah.
uh,
These three
love for the
things are of
sake
real worth and have consideration. God, Sadguru, and love. That's because the Sadguru is God. You know, he's God
Right.
in human form. And
And-
love means your love for him.
Oh, okay. Your love for him. I didn't know
And
if that
his for you. And his for you. That link between you and the Sadguru, the link of love there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't
so
know
he
if
says
that
in,
was
yeah.
I didn't know if that was referring to love for the sake of love, you know, as Baba commented once on
Right.
one of his lovers saying he loves me for no reason at all, you know.
Well,
for the sake of
probably. I mean, he's saying, boys, try to create love within you. He's constantly telling them, create
Oh.
love, create Prem. So I guess it probably means all of those things.
Okay, thank you.
If I could make a comment, Ward, I think that that's exactly what Baba was doing with the boys as he was giving out these talks. You know, he was encouraging them to listen with their hearts, to open their hearts, knowing that their minds would follow, because the intellectual part is just too complex for them. Anyway, I think Christina is up next.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Not well.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Go
You're
ahead.
still muffled, but we can hear you.
Okay, is that better maybe?
There you go.
That's a little better. Yeah.
Okay. So in regard to love and referencing that first issue of not being able to count the universes, I just keep going back to what it says in Infinite Intelligence, and that is that it is all God seeing falsely, and the process of seeing really. So, as you were saying, Ward, counting the universes would be like putting two mirrors in front of each other. It would be impossible, because one is and it would create that duality, which would cause like a vibration that could just shatter the whole business. And a vibration like movement of thought, not movement like physical and gross, but it would have its reverberation in the gross and could be catastrophic. So, and that relates to love, because that desire for God to know itself is the seminal must, as it's referred to in God Speaks, the must of that causes all love in illusion, in the universe. And so it makes sense that he would say the only thing that matters is the object and the method, you know, the Sadguru, God, the Sadguru, and that activity which will get you there. So that makes sense to me.
You know, this is kind of this is from much later, but a lot of these topics we're bringing up, I mean, we don't have much about the universe, but the nature, many things relevant to this are there, but he's just been explaining all these highly detailed points about prana and akasha and drops and bubbles. This is on the 7th of December. It's about 4 lectures on. Then he says, Ishwar ane marg siva baduj kotu. Apart from Ishwar and the path, all else is false. And we had this figure, and I couldn't make sense of it. Here, this is God unconscious at the very, very beginning. This is God conscious. And here are the 6 planes. And I was trying to say, well, hey, Baba, what about like the gross sphere? What about like evolution? What about like the divine theme? Hey, man, you're the guy who came up with the divine theme. What happened to it? And then I suddenly realized this is showing like what's important to these boys. Everything apart from the path to God, everything beneath that is not relevant to them. Forget about it, kids. Just drop it. And that's what this diagram shows. God unconscious, and then you get on the path and you go to God, because these are, how do you say, prodigies. They may not have known it, but they were. These are the elite, and he's setting them on the path, and this is what they need to know about. So that was that figure that we're going to come back to. I was really puzzled by it for a long time. It didn't make any sense. But then I just thought, it's this thing. None of these other things matter to them. Or should matter to them. And that's part of what I think, this history we went over very quickly, but Baba totally isolated them from everybody and everything. They didn't have any contact with the kids in the Hazrat Babajan High School, even though they were taking classes. They wouldn't talk to them. They didn't talk to villagers. They were up on the hill, which in those days, no electricity, completely dark. It was very safe environment. Baba had them so protected by the Mandali. The Mandali couldn't even talk to them except on matters like if you're managing the dormitory, you could talk to them on some relevant topic. None of the Mandali could talk to them. Well, why is that? Well, I think it's obvious. He was creating in them a state where they could experience this. Nothing matters except God. And even if you touch them, it might have had such an effect, it would have jolted them out of that state. That's what I think, anyway.
Christina, were you trying to raise your hand? I was seeing an applause icon, so
yes, it was.
So you were okay. Wrong icon, dear. That's all right. Go for it.
Thank you for saying that, Ward. I think it's important to have that observation. This whole book of lectures, these are not self-help lectures towards how to have a happy life.
No.
These are about leaving life behind and, to try and implement these kinds of things and also hold down a regular job and go to your kids' soccer meets. I don't think that's what this is about at all. I wouldn't look at this book like some kind of a guidebook for happy living,
It's the general plan of organization is the divine theme, broadly speaking, although Baba hadn't introduced that term yet, but he starts in 2 lectures when he really starts with the creation and then the evolutionary process, and then he goes to involution, but he almost completely skips over reincarnation. And he doesn't talk about the trap of reincarnation or anything like that. And again, I was thinking, why is that? Because he didn't want the kids to think about that.
Correct.
Because of like what you're saying, their job was to get on the path to God. He was actually doing it. The Mandali, he never let them experience a damn thing. But these kids, he was getting them on the path to God, the experience path.
Yeah. Makes total sense. It's not about having a happy life. Yeah.
It's not even like discourses, which are kind of giving you balanced guidance in your spiritual, journey, which entails dealing with the world every day. It's not even like that.
Yeah, this was not karma yoga. This is absolutely not karma yoga.
No. Jim, are you wanting to?
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
You're muted.
You owe me another nickel.
I'm sorry. I was thinking about back when we were talking about counting the universes. And the idea of counting a universe would seem to indicate that one's expecting a total number. And so if the universe is constantly evolving, constantly flowing out, how could you ever come up with a final number? So if he wanted to have a final number, it would be the end of the whole flow, something like that. Kind of strikes me that way.
Yeah, I know. I agree. You know, a universe in infinite intelligence. I know we had to not. I didn't really answer when Cheryl was asking to explain thinking the universe because it's so difficult. But universe is a synonym there for imagination, and imagination is illimitable. That you can't give boundaries to it. Anything that you can think of belongs to the domain of the imagination. There's no possibility that is not in the domain of the imagination. So I can see you can't, so in universes, you can't count them because the instant you do, there are everything that you didn't count has been added into the picture. You can't draw a line in that domain. Yeah. But it is very striking that Baba, I mean, I feel it seems clear to me that Baba was talking about universes. He was not talking about galaxies or planets. And in 1962, in the East-West Gathering, Baba did return to that theme. And he said there are, in fact, innumerable universes. And he said that scientists would come to know this. And it seems that the world of science certainly speculates about that now. Whereas back at this time, nobody would have, I mean, it was just a ridiculous idea. Nobody talked about it at all.
John posted a comment in the chat. Do you want to read that, John? Or do you want me to read it for you? It says, I noticed that this lecture to the boys did not talk about knowing, but calculating, counting the number of universes, probably meeting at any given instant. And this game of the perfect masters is counting with their gross eyes.
Huh.
In Lord Mayhair Online, it says the universes are emanating so fast, another reason the flow would have to be stopped to count them, that it is overwhelming to the human mind. Perhaps this also means the gross and mental bodies of the perfect master, even as such a one is using universal mind. Pretty good.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. You know, when we get to where it really starts, which is here, this lecture, 5th, 6th December, there, the topic of knowing really does get introduced. And it's going to turn out that knowing is one of the major themes. You can see there, ocean, light, and if you can see on that page 113, that's visible to you all, right? Ocean, light, and knowledge. Those are three great metaphoric systems that he develops a lot for about 6, 7, 8 lectures or so. This is all preliminary. Oops. Well, what should we do? Do we have further questions? We could read a little bit in the next one, or what's your pleasure?
Well, I was wondering, some people hesitate to ask a question. If you want to ask, just go ahead and raise your hand.
Yeah,
I'm going
don't
to
worry.
I'm going to stop the recording if we don't go on to another reading.
Yeah.
Please don't hesitate.
Yeah, don't hesitate. Don't feel that like you have to, you know, that if your question is stupid or something like that. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, why don't we do
a lot of times, yeah, a lot of times that.
I want to add something.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm raising my hand.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I have also been reading with Scott McCaig almost every Monday night for over 2 years now. Baba's messages through Narina, Baba's mystical messages. And one of the best ones, if anybody wants to read, it's been posted. It's on the Trust website, the original, and one can read it. And this is from The Good and the Bad in Mysticism. And so I'm just going to, I take notes while Scott is reading, and I'm going to just read a couple of these. This is Baba speaking through Narina. These were published in the Meher Baba journals.
You know, Cheryl, I'm sorry.
But
I'm
this
sorry
is
to interrupt you.
relevant to what we're talking about with Baba, what Baba's saying to the boys. And he's saying something, Baba's saying for what Ward has just suggested, that Baba's saying, forget evolution, reincarnation, just focus on the path, and that these boys were ready, which is true. If I can just do this for a minute, I haven't spoken.
Well,
much.
we had sort of talked in the beginning, maybe you weren't here yet,
I
we
was
wanted to
here from
stay,
before the beginning.
yeah, we just wanted to stay focused on the text itself.
Okay, we're right.
We'll try to get
Okay.
into it more depth in the workshops. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Ward, should we?
They're valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, we often get off into a lot of different books then from this. It happens a lot. There's nobody's fault. I understand your enthusiasm, but we want to try to get through as much as the book for as many people as we can. Elizabeth, did you have a question?
Well, I don't know if I can ask it because I couldn't ask my other question, but this is a similar. Ward just mentioned knowing, the concept of knowing about 5 minutes ago. And I was just wondering if you'd like to elaborate a little bit more. And this knowing, I presume, is different from creating and realizing.
Yeah, Baba's going to get into that. We'll get to that in about 2 lectures. It's going to become one of the major themes. We can unpack it then.
But can you just say, give an overview of what it is so we understand what you're talking about in general?
Let's wait till we get there. It's very hard to unpack. There's a lot to it. I mean, it's a most interesting topic.
Yeah,
it's related to the gross and the subtle and prana and akash and all kinds of other things that haven't come up yet.
There's a fine line between squelching your enthusiasm.
Yeah. No. It's a very good question.
It's just really hard. Yeah.
But can you just give one sentence overview so we?
He just said he couldn't. He just said he couldn't, Elizabeth. You want to call me afterwards and we can talk, okay?
Yes, I would love that.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. Diana, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Ward, I'm afraid I was called away for a moment just when you were reading about the shopkeeper and the mirror and creating love. And I was wondering if you could just summarize that for me. It seems important since you say in each lecture, Baba ends with saying, create love.
Yeah, Baba had said, if you want to see your own eyes, you can't do it, but to do it, you need a mirror. But how do you get a mirror? Well, you have to go to a shopkeeper. But when you go to a shopkeeper, he's not just going to give it to you. You have to pay for it. And what do you need in payment? Love. And in this, the shopkeeper is like the Sadguru. Money may be compared to love for the Sadguru, and the mirror may be compared to the grace of the master, Guru Krupa. So if you want to know yourself, you've got to get the mirror from the Sadguru, and he wants love. You've got to pay him. Without it, he won't give it to you. That was the analogy he gave. These are kids, so he's giving really simple kinds of analogies that they would all understand.
Any other questions? Yeah, it's funny we're doing this because none of us has the book yet.
I know it's a blasted nuisance.
Yeah.
Whereas I know, I mean, I've read the book about 1 billion times. So
I know.
Yeah. A lot of the questions, sometimes these questions that come up, when Baba gets back to them, that will really help.
Yeah, we may have to go through this several times, huh? This might be your new job.
Like for the rest of your life, you know.
Yeah.
I first read these back in 1997. I could shoot myself for not having had what it took to collar Asfendir Vasali, but I keep thinking, I don't think he would have remembered. I don't think the kids would have remembered these talks. I think Baba was making his impression at the moment that he gave it, and it was archetypal, universal impressions he was making. And whether they remembered it later or not didn't matter. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Well, it feels like we're kind of winding down. We could just read a little bit of the next one, and then we'll start it again next time. What do you think?
You know what what would be a good way of doing that is we could look at this figure.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because the actual talk starts here, but the figure is at the very beginning. And this second lecture is kind of on a separate topic. It's it's the third lecture where he really gets back to these things of cosmology and the universe and everything. But here you can see on the right-hand side, maybe I can get this to work. Let's see if what happens. Yeah, you can see the laser pointer, right? So this is one of our sources. Actually, there are about 10 source diagrams for this. This one was a particularly rich one. And let me show you much later where we get another version of this figure. Just bringing out some of the interconnections. Let's see where this is. This is actually, here it is. You can see this, right? This is really the same diagram. You can see down here the source diagram. We won't deal with this because this is one of the talks that Baba gave to the Mandali. It's actually another rendering of the very same talk. But what this diagram is showing is the levels of truth, the levels of knowledge, the levels of gnosis. And Baba's using the standard Sufi terms for this. And these terms are actually worth getting to know. They're standard for Baba. The four terms are Shariat, Tariqat, Marifat, and Hakikat. So that's Shariat, Tariqat, Marifat, and Hakikat. And the English he gives understanding, seeing, knowledge, realization. But he means those in a higher sense. So Shariat, it's used in Islam, but Baba universalizes it to refer to all religions. Baba uses it to mean the rites, rituals, ceremonies, doctrines and dogmas and standard understanding of any of the great paths or great religions. So you can see here's the Zoroastrian fire urn, the Om sign in Hinduism, the Star of David, the Buddhist wheel, the cross, and the Islamic crescent. We put those symbols in, by the way, just to further express the idea. So this is the level in which the masses of humanity are on. And in this lecture, he's going to talk about that, actually. Tariqat is actually entering into the spiritual path, like with the first plane, you enter into the tariqat. In Islam, Sufism, there are all these tariqats, and it refers to different orders and different Sufi orders. Some of these, like anything, Sufism could become conventionalized and ritualized and superficialized. It wasn't always something exalted, although many times it was. Hafiz has never a good word to say about Sufism. He always tears it apart. But the real tariqat is the actual spiritual path. And Baba seems to use it here to refer to the lower planes, probably the first three. And marifat, now these terms get used variously in Sufism. Baba's usage is not always exactly the same, but Baba seems to refer here to marifat as the knowledge of what he later called the mental sphere, fifth and sixth plane, that kind of knowledge. And realization is hakikat, and the word haq, H-A-Q-Q, means the truth. And it's an important word in Sufism. All of these ideas are big in Sufism. The hakikat, Baba refers often at this time to the famous martyr Mansur al-Halaj, perfect master, who said, I am Anal-Haq, I am the truth, means I am God. And he was crucified for it. So earlier on, or actually during this first lecture, Baba was saying you can get yourself into a lot of trouble if you assert these things prematurely, or if you talk to others about this prematurely. So if you start talking about human beings becoming God, that's a formula for getting yourself into trouble. Certainly within the Islamic world, that would be true. Christians are not so keen on it, nor would Jews be. Certain branches of Hinduism, they would understand the idea. So, and here you can see that it was beautiful Persian Arabic script for these words. So I'll read this key, since this would be all of this step up towards Baba's discussion in the next week. Yeah, here's like a source diagram. You can see what we were working with. The religions are called A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We kept those letters there, but put in some of the symbols. Okay, the four levels in the pursuit of truth, which comprise the subject of the opening part of this lecture, are represented in figure 3 as A, B, C, and D, right? Shariat, Marifat, Tariqat, Marifat, Hakikat. C and D, with an associated wording Meher Baba took from the lexicon of Sufism. The spiritual pilgrim begins at the bottom, at the level of A, or Shariat. You hear about in the news, they'll talk about the Sharia, right? Some of you have probably heard that. That's this. Although Baba, as I say, universalized it to refer to all religions. That is the husk of religion. And from there ascends through B, Tariqat, or the initiatory stages of the spiritual path, onto the higher planes of Marifat, C, the mystic, esoteric knowledge of saints. The journey reaches its goal in D, Hakikat, or truth, which is to say, God realization. At the level of Shariat, the bottom rung on this ladder, the understandings and dogmas and rituals of different religions are distinct from each other, as represented in this diagram by the symbols of the different major world religions. I mean, we put that in. So they're all different on this level when you're down at the bottom, at the Shariat. Oops. Sorry, I moved pages. I have to get back if my cursor would cooperate. There we go. Yeah.
There you go.
There we go. World religions. Thereafter, the path becomes one, and differences between the religions come to an end. That's part of what Baba says here. Once you get beyond the Shariat, it's just one single tariqat. They're not different in a fundamental way. So that's the opening diagram, which provides us with the subject for this. And in view of the time, maybe we should just stop there, not try
Yeah, I
attempt
think
to go any further.
that's a good idea. And what I'm going to do then is, if you want to stop the share, I will stop the recording, and then we can just open up to talk for a few minutes if people want to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to throw in, after all of that, Al-Ghazali on the limits of reason, one of your favorite quotes.
You have that quote?
I do. He says, quote, "The farthest limit achieved by human reason through the principles of the illumination of his sublimity is bewilderment."
Can you read that again? I love that quote. That sort of is it sort of might make many of us feel, hey, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
If we're bewildered.
Yeah, nothing's wrong then. It says the farthest limit achieved by human reason through the principles of the illumination of his, capital H, sublimity, is bewilderment.
So the farthest limit that the mind, that the intellect can reach by illuminating the sublimity of God, the farthest limit is total bewilderment. So if ever you feel bewildered, sounds pretty good.
So you can see that H is capitalized. Yeah.
Can you put that in the chat, please, Cassandra?
I can send it by email. It's actually a screenshot that I took from one of Ward's classes. So I'll try to.
I love that quote. Isn't that a wonderful quote?
Okay. All right, let me stop the recording here. 1 sec. Well, actually, before I stop, let's say the beloved prayer together, please.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead and unmute if you are willing to do that. Let's hear a chant of voices in Baba's prayer. Beloved God,
help us all love you more and more and more, till yet more, till we become worthy of union with you.
Help us all
hold fast to Baba's Daman till the very end.
Avatar Meher
Baba Ki Jai.
Avatar
Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Thank you all, you wonderful, shiny people. That was great.